at Tulsa Zoo and Living Museum, and with me today is Russell Studebaker, and Russell's curator of horticulture out here at the zoo, and also a lot of you in eastern Oklahoma may have read his articles in the Tulsa World over the years. And Russell, thanks for having us out here today.
It's our pleasure, and I'm glad you could visit it, even this time of the close of the growing season.
Well, even on a windy day like this, it's a good day to look at grasses, because that's one dimension of horticulture that we don't often talk about, and that's gardening for sound. And ornamental grasses, which we've covered numerous times in Oklahoma gardening, certainly give us a nice rustling sound during the day. And which one do we have here? This one's new to me.
This one is one of the fountain grasses. This is the black seeded fountain grasses, Pennisetum, alopecuroides, Mouldry.
Oh, boy.
And it has a dark seed head on it, and it's a little bit darker. We've had frost here, of course, and it's a little bit darker when it is not quite as ripe and ready to shed.
Okay.
It's a nice clump grass, but if you'll notice over here in some of the outlying fescue turf, this one has a tendency to seed out into other areas, so be aware of that. It's not all of them are capable of doing that, but this one seems to be very capable of doing that.
Okay, and this is one that drops its seed pretty regularly too.
Yes.
So if you cut this for a dry arrangement, you'd have to use some care and
right. And
so
probably if you used hairspray on it or something like that, you could establish that where it wouldn't shed.
Okay, all right, that's something to think about. Now, is this fountain grass hardy?
This is a perennial fountain grass,
This is a
exactly.
perennial. Okay, so that's one you don't
And it
have
has
to
a
bring in
good
for
dark,
winter.
of course the leaves are changing because of frost, but it has a good dark leaf in the growing season. It makes, as you can see, a very tight clump. These plants have only been out here for a couple of seasons, and they were transplanted from gallon containers.
Well, they've really filled in well, and I noticed you have some creeping junipers and other more standard landscape plants that, in contrast with these, really look good in the landscape.
Yes, the contrast in these will, of course, become more straw-colored, so it'll even be a more contrast. And as you know, the culture of grasses is pretty easily accomplished in the garden or even a large landscape, because you don't have to cut these back until say in March, sometime right before the new growth comes out.
Okay, so you've got that winter interest there for a while.
Winter interest, exactly.
Well, now I understand you have a really huge form of a fairly common ornamental grass.
Yes, we have a fairly good selection of some of the Miscanthus grasses here, and let's go and look at some of those.
Great. Wow, well, Russell, you're right. These certainly fit the scale of the new elephant museum that you have out here at the zoo. And what's the name of this Miscanthus?
This is the giant Miscanthus. It's one of the tallest ones that grow, and it's not as much as a clump grower, but it does spread from some rhizomes. And as you can see, it really makes kind of a flag or a banner when the wind blows here above this tall fence. And that fence is what, about 7 feet tall, would you say?
And that's beautiful against the fence. So would someone who lives in a real windswept part of Oklahoma, would they need to have that someplace that's has a windbreak behind it so it doesn't fall over? Not
necessarily. No. The most exciting places I've seen it is where you can look down on it or across a vista of the landscape and see it at a far distance, particularly if it's near a pond or a water element. It's very exciting that way.
Real striking. And now on up ahead here, you've got maiden grass I'm familiar with, but this one has more of a pink tinge to it.
Well, yes. They often come out with a kind of a maroon or rusty color, and then as the seed heads dry, they get much lighter and of course fill out and will stay quite effective like this until we have a lot of wind that will whip off the small seedlets here.
But these will pretty well stay into midwinter.
Yes. Oh yes.
That's great. And you have another Miscanthus, I guess, behind the elephant exhibit that people can see from a distance.
Yes, that's one of the well is the variegated Cabaret Miscanthus, and there's another one that's interesting back there. It's the smallest of the fountain grasses. It's called Little Bunny.
Okay, well, we have that one out in the studio garden, and it's real cute. It's just nice and short. So if you come and see the Elephant Museum, you'll also see the extremes of the grasses that are available that you can put in your landscape at home. Well, Russell, this is certainly an unusual application of cattle panels. A lot of people buy these at hardware stores and they only put them horizontally, but you have them arched so nicely in this vertical pattern. What's the function here?
Well, the function was to grow some vines on these, Sue, to shade the windows for the Aldabra tortoise exhibit.
Okay.
The sun was coming in there very much and heating up the glass, and it was even hot to touch, and also causing condensation on the inside. So
okay.
It was to give a shade, and it was probably the easiest way to make and sturdiest way to make a trellis, you see.
It sure is. It really looks great, and you got a nice mix of things on here of clematis and different honeysuckles and
yes, and trumpet vine, and then some wisteria, I think, and some annual vines too.
A nice mix of things. Now on over here, I guess this is one of the last grasses I kind of wanted to let people see. Now, the name of this again is?
That's a Japanese bloodgrass, and it's a nice red color for most of the year. And as you can see, it does spread a little bit, but it's not too invasive. But the height is a good measure of what its total height would be.
Okay, but it eventually will spread out somewhat, and it is also, again, it's hardy.
It's a perennial, yes,
okay.
A hardy perennial.
Great. And then over here, speaking of red, I think I've just fallen in love with this plant. This is just beautiful, and this is, need to come on around here so folks can see this against this limestone rock. It's just such a nice contrast.
This is Itea and the Itea, and the common name I think is Virginia Sweet Spire. Spire is one of the common names. This one is a selected cultivar called Henry's Garnet, and it's wonderful in that in certain winters that foliage will stay on into January and keep that maroon color and
beautiful.
Red color.
Now the sweet spires in general, they'll take a real heavy wet soil.
Yes, or even some standing water, or an upland situation like this.
Well,
now, it will spread a little bit and make a few sprouts around. So I wouldn't call it invasive, but it has good vigor.
It'll fill in, okay.
Good.
But if y'all have a place at home that is just a low wet spot where shrubs don't seem to thrive, this is one that you might consider. It's
and
really
I think
nice
it will take some shade. Now, this is a young plant, so it's very small. The other plants we saw earlier out here were about 2.5 feet tall.
Yeah, so they're going to get up in size a little bit. And
correct.
Then back behind us here, we want y'all to notice another wonderful contrast against a natural object. They've taken some driftwood from local lakes and planted a red barberry in front of it, and the texture of the two is sort of spiky and coming out at you. It's just really a nice application, and again, the zoo is a great place to get landscape ideas. Russell, you've got a couple of trees and some more shrubs that we want to show people before we leave today.
Okay, great. Let's go look at them.
Okay. Oh, Russell, these are looking great.
Yes, the Oakleaf Hydrangea, and it's one of their nicer times of the year with the foliage turning that's nice dark maroon and red. You can see the flowers from the summer here.
Yeah, they look great, and those dry nicely too.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Now you also have some things that are showing some fall color right now.
Yes, the Native American Smoketree is in color right now, and then one of the honeysuckles, the Tartarian Honeysuckle, has lots of nice berries on it.
And those are all plants that would grow well around the state here.
Exactly,
great.
Really tough plants.
Well, this is a good place to finish up our zoo landscape tour, and this is an elm tree that was cut down, and Clayton Koss, local chainsaw artist, carved this, and I think it's just beautiful. And we always want people to realize when you come to a zoo, that's where you want to show your kids around so they can learn about animals and plants. And want y'all to notice where that's pointing to. And Russell, thanks for being with us today.
Well, thank
really
you. It was our pleasure, and we hope that you will come again, and also the members of your audience will come to the zoo.
Great.
See you at the zoo.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.